Hi guys. Hi guys, today I'm recording. Today I'm not starting recording a stream and not recording. Hi guys. Hi guys, today I'm recording. Today I'm not starting recording a stream and not recording. Hi guys. Hi guys, today I'm recording. Today I'm not starting recording a stream and not recording. Hi guys, today I'm... Hi guys. Hi guys, today I'm recording. Today I'm not starting recording a stream and not recording. Hi guys. Hi guys, today I'm recording. Today I'm not starting recording a stream and not recording. Hi guys. Hi guys, today I'm recording. Today I'm not starting recording a stream and not recording. Hi guys, today I'm... Hi guys. Hi guys, today I'm recording. Today I'm not starting recording a stream and not recording. Hi guys. Hi guys, today I'm recording. Today I'm not starting recording a stream and not recording. Hi guys. Hi guys, today I'm recording. Today I'm not starting recording a stream and not recording. Hi guys, today I'm... Hi guys. Hi guys, today I'm recording.
Craft just revealed his disability live.
What happens if you...
Are you paying for a bulge? Well, you don't have to.
Look at the support. Flexible sidebar.
So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where a continent forms in the Pacific Ocean. Now, as we can see here, we have the Pacific Ocean, the largest ocean in the world. And it's very barren in the middle. You have Hawaii, and that's about it. Of course, there's a couple of small islands over here. But other than that, there's a whole bunch of nothing here. So we're going to be putting a continent here today. Now, I did this with the Atlantic Ocean, and that went pretty well. And I think you guys want to see Pacific Ocean because the Pacific Ocean is a lot larger, and we can put a larger continent there. There's also a lot more interesting countries around this body of water. So if you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All of that great old support is very appreciated. I have a few announcements to make towards the end of this video about the channel, so make sure you do stick around for that. But yeah, let's go ahead and draw this new continent. So unfortunately, for this whole continent thing to work, Hawaii has to disappear. Just kidding. We're actually be making Hawaii a part of this continent, and we're going to do that in a very strategic way. So first off, I think it's obvious that we're going to need an area for the continent to kind of get close to Hawaii, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. I mean, I guess it would make sense, but like tectonic plates stuff, I don't know. But if you watch the Atlantic continent video, you'll know that for these continents, I kind of just do whatever I think is right. There's really no like correct way to draw a continent, so I'm just kind of doing whatever. Can't be afraid to erase your mistakes. Did you know that Paradise Island is actually like right here on the world map? So this is where the rumbling started, and then it just kind of, I guess Marley is technically Indonesia or Australia, if you've made it that far. If not, L. All right, so here is our new continent right here in the middle of the Pacific. And also, if you haven't noticed already, obviously this is not the normal world map you're used to seeing. This is a very different one, and that's because map chart doesn't have like this Robinson projection, but with the Pacific centered, so we have to use this, which is not an issue. This is a very different one, and that's because map chart doesn't have like this Robinson projection, but with the Pacific centered, so we have to use this, which is not. This is a very different one, and that's because map chart doesn't have like this Robinson projection, but with the Pacific centered, so we have to use this, which is not an issue because we're focusing over here. We're not focusing about like stuff over here. Anyway, let's go ahead and fill this thing in. It is formed. Now, why did I call it that? Well, I mean, what else am I going to call it? Hawaii. So this new continent appears out of nowhere. I mean, obviously, if a continent was going to be in the Pacific, it would have had to happen billions of years ago. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, so we're left with the boring old Pacific Ocean. But hey, this thing just spawned in, and you know, all the water just probably sunk a bunch of other major cities like California cities and I guess major Chinese cities. But that doesn't matter because there's a new continent. New DLC just dropped over here in the Pacific. And right away, the United States is going to go over there because it's the United States. They need to manifest their destiny. Remember, when they were doing that originally, they ran out of land to manifest over here in the West. But hey, guess what? They got to Hawaii eventually. They got to Alaska eventually. Well, they bought it. But now there's even more land over here for America to manifest. And China doesn't have to make artificial islands anymore because a new one just popped up. So they're going to also go ahead and go over towards this new island. Japan, who, you know, that whole Japanese Empire thing didn't really work in World War II. But hey, free land over here. So they're also going to go there. Australia is always looking to expand because it's Australia. Maybe Canada wants to get in on that. Maybe Mexico. But this will be a very powerful country, heavy kind of tear apart because none of these South American countries are going to have the capability to colonize. So the US will go ahead and send some military aspects, some scientists, some geologists, and they're going to colonize this. And of course they already have Hawaii, so they will go ahead and branch off of that and set up their colony down here in the south. China's already on this as well. They set up their colony over here in the western part of the continent. Japan is also on this as they make a landing around this bay here and claim the surrounding area. Canada also manages to get a claim on the new continent as they take a little bit of a chunk out this northern part, keeping with the square borders, of course. Now for Australia, they're going to go ahead and send their boats up and they will go ahead and get themselves some land on the southern portion of the island, also keeping that British square border trend going. The Philippines will go ahead and grab this island. Now I don't know if they probably don't have the capability to colonize, but we're going to give them that capability. And Indonesia will be the final country to grab something here as they go up north and claim this land. So, multiple claims on this island here. The US has the largest, China has the second largest, and honestly, I think Indonesia has the third or fourth. But that doesn't matter now because there is still a lot of remaining land, and the geography of this island is fairly similar to that of Taiwan, is it? No, not necessarily Taiwan. They have like mountains over here. But what I'm thinking of, I think it's Hawaii, where like the coast, it's sea level, and then it just keeps going up toward the center. Like it just reaches points. So there's only going up. There's no like flat surfaces. I mean, there's probably a few down here. But for the overall main geography of the island, we have climbing slopes going up to this large point over here where it's kind of flat up here, but the geography that is similar to Hawaii. That actually has literally nothing to do with what I'm about to say though, as the US looks to expand their colony a little bit further. They are going to go ahead and claim some more coast around here, and at this point the UN is obviously going to step in and try to regulate as much as possible. Now the issue with that is that the United States is one of the leaders of the UN, China is a leader of the UN, so they already have some of that influence and can say nuh-uh. Additionally, Russia is going to try to get down here, but they end up getting blocked off by Japan and Canada as they both expand their coastlines out in order to stop any Russian landings on the north of the island. So this goes over to Japan and this goes over to Canada, once again keeping that square border. So Russia's obviously not too happy about that. They're going to go ahead and say that these countries can't colonize this continent and that it should belong to the UN. China will veto that. The United States will veto that out of the interest for their allies and the former colonies colonies. The UK will go ahead and not veto that, giving the main council a majority. France's vote doesn't matter because it's France. The United States and Canada will go ahead and form their border along a parallel line, longitude line, latitude line. I don't know the difference. So they're going to go ahead and expand that over to here, and that's where the official border between these two countries is. Now, beyond this, they can do whatever they want. I mean, the United States could technically do something like this.
Now we got to go help people customize and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Maybe where's the golf cart?
This and claim this, but they won't. But Canada's not allowed past that line, and the United States is not past this line, and the United States is not allowed past there. But over here, it's free game. The United States and Japan will also make a treaty which sets their border along a river that runs through the center of the mountains. And what they use is the river that looks like this. Now, of course, it extends more this way, and this could possibly do something like that. But they're only worried about this portion of the river. So the United States will go ahead and extend its border out to there. And for this, they're going to do something that looks like this. Very nice. Why do they do that? I don't know. It's just an American thing to do. I mean, look at these straight line borders. They're everywhere. I mean, look at Minnesota. Minnesota! So Japan's border gets extended down to there, and well, they can figure this out with Canada. But for now, they're going to do that. Okay, so the colonization of this island is going fairly well. Countries are getting their claims, and they're also sorting out treaties over here in the north. Mexico will be the next country and final country to make a landing on this island, as they claim the tip of the island over here. Now, honestly, can't remember if I already had a country claim this, so my bad if I did. I don't think I did. But Mexico gets this, this, and that. As for Australia, they're going to go ahead and extend their straight line all the way over here towards the ocean. That's probably like the Gulf of Hawaii. This is the Gulf of Hawaii, but then this is kind of like a bay, so maybe like the Bay of South Hawaii. I'm not funny, I know. Mexico will kind of have an issue with this, but that is until Australia goes ahead and says, hey, there's this cool little river right here, and we're gonna go ahead and make the border over here, so you don't have to be so mad. So Australia and Mexico's border is officially made. Mexico gets all of this land, Australia gets this land, and this line is consequentially erased. To kind of check in with these other countries, we have the Philippines making landing on the main continent. Indonesia is going north. China kind of enlarged themselves, and they met up with Japan, who enlarged themselves as well. So now up here to Canada and Japan, they're going to go ahead and finally work out a border agreement, which basically says, hey, we're going to do some squiggly stuff, and there we go. So Japan gets all of this, and Canada will get all of that remains all the way down to the US border. Cool. So the northern part of the continent is completely full, but there is still a very large piece of land in the center here. The US is going to go ahead and say, hey, we claim all of this. And obviously, some other countries like China, the Philippines, and Mexico, and Australia, and Indonesia are all going to say, hell no, you cannot do that. Mexico simply claims the rest of this coast, which is not that bad. Australia claims all of this. Indonesia claims all of this. The Philippines claim all of this, weirdly enough. And China claims all of this. So yeah, there's obviously an issue there. Japan will go ahead and simply just say, hey, we don't want to be involved in any of these weird discussion things, so we're going to go ahead and follow the remainder of this river border that was drawn up between us and the United States already, and we'll just go ahead and claim this. The river kind of like goes like boom. That might be important here in a second. But China and the United States are seemingly okay with that, and Japan's borders are officially done. The United States and Mexico are going to come to an agreement here, basically just following this river here. The Mexican, but China and the United States are seemingly okay with that, and Japan's borders are officially done. The United States and Mexico are going to come to an agreement here, basically just following this river here. The Mexicans cannot go north of this, and the Americans cannot go south of that. It doesn't necessarily draw up any specific border, but we can go ahead and say that Mexico reaches up to there, and the Americans reach up to there. No one else on the continent objects to this because it's not near anyone else's land. The Indonesians and the Australians will come to an agreement that basically says that Australia will get control over this, but in exchange, no one else on the continent objects to this because it's not near anyone else's land. The Indonesians and the Australians will come to an agreement that basically says that Australia will get control over this, but in exchange, they're going to have to shorten how much else land they have, as they are restricted to only this. The Americans, being the sneaky guys they are, somehow, some way, they mutually agree with China to not have a set border over here. So China extends to here, the United States extends to here. All right, so in the Treaty of Pacifica, we have the borders being drawn up to look something like this. Now, this is very confusing because this exists, and this is its own country. That's right, they came together and said that, you know what, we're not dividing up any more land, let's just make a country. And this country is set up by the UN, so it's not going to last very long. But nonetheless, Pacifica has its first sovereign nation and a whole bunch of colonists. Now that is the basis for this video, but we will look into the future here. Obviously, this is the colonization